ever been so sick that you needed someone to take care of you? You caught a stomach bug or a really bad cold and you were just too sick to get out of bed? The kind of sick where it hurts to move, you look like a zombie, and you can't even enjoy watching movies all day because you feel that bad. It's the worst.
Taking care of someone in need probably isn't a natural thing to do for a lot of us. I think it's because we all tend to live in a me bubble. We think about ourselves more than we think about anything or anyone else. Our world tends to revolve around us. Sometimes we're so far into our me bubble that we don't even notice what's going on around us.
When we're preoccupied with ourselves, we tend not to pay attention to the people and the things around us. We put ourselves first. We serve ourselves first. We take care of ourselves first, are generous with ourselves first. And generally, we make sure that we have everything we need before we turn our attention to anyone else. Now, does that sound like anyone you know? I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, this sounds a little bit like all of us.
I get it. Getting outside of that bubble is hard. We're surrounded by a world full of people who live the same way. Everyone's living in their own me bubble. Being one person who decides to break the bubble and connect with someone else, especially someone in need, just doesn't feel like the normal thing to do.
And beyond that, helping someone in need can feel uncomfortable and not very much fun. What if it means you have to do something that feels awkward? Like sitting with a kid in the lunchroom who always sits alone, or being nice to someone at school who you just don't seem to have anything in common with. Or what if it means you have to do something that you don't want to do? Like serve a meal to the homeless or give away some of your toys and clothes to a charity.
That me bubble, it starts to sound pretty good when you think of it that way. But here's the thing. I don't think that's the way we're supposed to feel about serving others. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with taking care of yourself. Of course that's important. But what I am suggesting is that maybe living in our me bubbles all the time is keeping us from living the way God wants us to live. We can't see the game plan He has for serving others if all we see is ourselves.
What if instead of being afraid to focus on the needs of others, we embraced it as a part of God's plan for our lives? What if we all decided to do a little less me thinking and a little more others thinking instead? When it comes to serving our neighbors, what would it look like if we started following God's game plan instead of our own?
Well, the Bible actually gives us an idea of what it looks like when we follow God's game plan for serving. And it comes in a parable or story that Jesus told in the book of Luke. Jesus' followers, the disciples, were sitting and talking to Jesus. And one of them asked Jesus this question: "Who is my neighbor?" In true Jesus fashion, he replied with a story.
Picture this with me. There was a Jewish guy walking down the road when all of a sudden he was attacked by robbers who beat him up, took everything he had, and left him to die, which sounds like a scene out of a movie or something. So the Jewish guy was beaten and left on the side of the road when two people just happened to walk by. And not just any two people, a priest and a temple assistant, both of whom seemed to be religious, godly Jewish men. And what did they do when they saw the guy bleeding and beaten on the side of the road? They literally kept walking. They even crossed the street to avoid the guy altogether. Man, that's cold.
But then the story takes an even more unexpected turn. Then a despised Samaritan came along. Despised Samaritan? That's harsh, but let me explain. The Jew who was attacked on the side of the road and the Samaritan who stumbled upon him came from two totally opposite sides of town. In fact, the Jews and the Samaritans had a clear hatred for one another because they believed different things, had different values, and lived differently. Sounds a little like the world we live in today sometimes, huh?
So of course, the Samaritan who was despised by the Jewish people wasn't going to stop and help the Jew he found on the side of the road, right? Wrong. And when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here."
This Samaritan, he might be my hero. Not only did he step outside of his me bubble long enough to see the need in front of him, the Samaritan also took compassion on the Jewish man and decided to help. And I mean, he really and truly helped this guy. He cleaned his wounds, took him to a nearby inn, and paid for everything he needed to recover. That's amazing. And then Jesus wrapped up this story with a question. Now, Which of these three would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same.
To truly follow God's game plan for serving our neighbors, the people we interact with day in and day out, we have to not only get outside of ourselves, but we have to go the extra mile. We have to take a tip from the Samaritan and look not just past ourselves, but past our judgments, ideas, and fears about others as well. We have to put their needs first, because love goes one step further.
Now, it would be easy to read this parable and judge those first two guys who walked by and left the man on the side of the road to die. And it was harsh for sure. But I think if we're honest, we've all been in those shoes before. Maybe we walk by someone in the hall every day who's hurting and alone, and we don't even smile at them. Or maybe we know our parents could use a little extra help around the house, but we don't offer to lend a hand. Or maybe we simply walk by people in need because they're not like us, we don't like them, or we assume we know their stories.
But what Jesus wants us to understand from this story is that it's never too late to burst out of our own bubbles to help someone else. It's part of God's game plan for our lives because love goes one step further. I love the way Jesus closed this story. He just simply told the people to go and do what the Samaritan had done. He didn't say, go and do the same when you feel like it, or go and do the same to those who are just like you, or go and do the same when it doesn't feel awkward. No, he just said to do it. And that's the game plan, to show love and mercy to all people in all circumstances.
I know this might feel impossible, and don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to leave here, find a guy beaten up on the side of the road, and pay for all his medical bills. But what I am going to tell you is to start living in such a way that shows that love goes one step further. And you can start by doing two simple things. One, open your eyes. Bust out of that me bubble just for a second and look around you. Who's in your home, at your school, on your team, in line in front of or behind you, in your small group, in your community? Those are your neighbors, and many of them may be in need.
And two, open your hands. The Samaritan opened his eyes to see a need, and then he opened his hands to meet it. And so can you. Do something for the people in need around you. Go above and beyond. Help your sister with her homework. Take out the trash for your parents. Donate some of your things to a local charity.
Just start by thinking of one thing you can do to meet a need around you, and then go out of your comfort zone and do it. Because when you're following God's game plan, you'll change others, and you won't walk away unchanged yourself.
So this week, as you're going about your life, remember to open your eyes and open up your hands. Because when it comes to serving, love goes one step further. So as you leave today, I want you to think about this. What's one extra step I can take to serve someone else this week?